Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you thought you understood about the world, the news you trusted, the leaders you respected, the systems you believed were designed to protect you, was built not on truth, but on carefully orchestrated illusions. You sit at the breakfast table, sip your coffee, and scroll through headlines that scream urgency, morality, progress. Yet a whisper creeps into your mind. What if all of this is staged? What if the most dangerous lies are not the ones told in secret, but the ones displayed openly in plain sight, where no one dares to question them? It's a paradox so unsettling it can make your stomach churn. Leaders, governments, corporations, institutions, those who claim to serve the people, often conceal their greatest deceptions not in the shadows, but in the full light of day. The trick is not hiding the truth, but overwhelming you with it, distorting it, reframing it, until you no longer know what is real. As the writer Aldous Huxley once warned, the greatest triumphs of propaganda have been accomplished not by doing something, but by refraining from doing. Silence, omission, distraction, these are the tools of power. But here is the contradiction that unsettles everything you thought you knew. The truth is rarely hidden in locked vaults or whispered only in dark rooms. Instead, it is left out in the open, scattered across plain language, obvious patterns, and glaring hypocrisies, counting on the fact that you are too busy, too exhausted, too conditioned to piece it together. Leaders don't hide the truth because they don't need to. They trust that most people won't notice, and if they do, they won't have the strength or courage to act on it. Does this not disturb you? Think of the last time you listened to a politician promise change, or a CEO vow to put people first. Did their words stir hope, or did they echo with the faint sound of rehearsed scripts? How often have you heard these same promises recycled across decades, always spoken with conviction, always swallowed by the masses, yet rarely fulfilled? Why is it that, in an age of endless information, people feel more confused, divided, and disoriented than ever before? Perhaps you sense it already. That gnawing suspicion that the systems you inhabit feed on your ignorance. That every distraction, every headline, every polished speech is less about informing you and more about shaping what you believe is worth knowing. As Nietzsche warned, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Could it be that our leaders understand this psychological weakness better than we do and wield it against us? Look around. Wars are waged in the name of peace. Freedoms are restricted in the name of safety. Economies crumble, while leaders assure you everything is stable. The louder the declarations, the more brittle the reality beneath them. Do you not feel the weight of this contradiction pressing down on your chest? George Carlin, the prophetic voice who cut through comedy with razor-sharp truth, once said, "It's a big club and you ain't in it." He wasn't only joking. He was pointing to something few dared to admit, that power doesn't need to cloak itself in secrecy when it can laugh in your face, show you the game, and still win because you choose to look away. Carlin didn't predict the future. He revealed the present we refuse to see, and so the question emerges heavy and unrelenting. If the truth is hidden in plain sight, if it stares us in the face day after day, why do so few recognize it? Why do so many walk blindly into manipulation, repeating the same cycles of belief and betrayal, decade after decade? Is it fear? Is it comfort? Is it the psychological burden of accepting that the very institutions we were raised to trust, schools, governments, corporations, religions, might be built on carefully managed illusions? Or is it something even darker, something that runs so deep in the human psyche that we would rather live inside a lie than risk the disorientation of truth? The great question is not simply whether leaders lie, but whether they even need to. What if their most powerful tool is your willingness to accept appearances as reality? What if the real prison is not censorship but distraction? What if the chains are not made of iron, but of comfort, routine, and the quiet reassurance that everything is under control? And here perhaps lies the most unsettling realization of all. The deception is not merely theirs, it is also ours. For every time we look away, every time we accept the script without question, every time we trade critical thought for convenience, we become co-authors of the very illusions we claim to despise. This is the silent conspiracy, not a shadowy cabal meeting in secret rooms, but the mutual agreement between leaders who manipulate and citizens who prefer not to notice. A performance where truth and lie blur into spectacle, and where asking the wrong questions feels more dangerous than believing the wrong answers. So pause for a moment. Feel the weight of that paradox pressing against your mind. The truth is not hidden, it is exposed. It is not whispered in secret. It is shouted openly with the confidence that you will dismiss it as noise. The stage is set, the actors are in place, the script is written, and the question remains, will you continue to applaud the performance or will you finally look behind the curtain? Imagine a mirror so fogged that no matter how close you press your face against it, you cannot see yourself clearly. This is not because the mirror is broken, but because the fog is constantly being replenished by forces you cannot control, distractions, narratives, subtle manipulations. Such is the state of modern human perception, distorted not by total ignorance, but by a haze deliberately designed to obscure clarity. The hidden problem is not that truth is absent, but that it is drowned in noise. And this noise is not accidental. It is the carefully orchestrated symphony of distraction, fear, and desire. Leaders throughout history have understood that people do not need to be chained to be controlled. They need only to be guided, nudged, entertained, reassured, distracted, until their capacity for independent thought withers. Carl Jung would have described this as the triumph of the collective shadow. When societies repress their fears and contradictions, they project them onto leaders who gladly play the role of savior, protector, or villain. People unconsciously invite deception because it spares them the anguish of self-confrontation. It is easier to accept a polished story than to look into the abyss of uncertainty. But why is it so effective? Because, as Nietzsche argued, humans are driven not primarily by truth, but by the will to power, by survival, by comfort, by meaning. Truth in its raw and brutal form can feel unbearable, so we trade it for illusions that soothe us. We have art, Nietzsche once said, so that we shall not die of the truth. Leaders exploit this very instinct. They offer the theater of progress, the drama of politics, the spectacle of crisis and resolution, and we, craving meaning, consume it eagerly. Arthur Schopenhauer, ever the pessimist, saw this as the inevitable consequence of the will to live. Human beings, he believed, are driven by blind striving, an insatiable hunger that rarely pauses for reflection. In such a state, truth becomes irrelevant if it threatens comfort or survival. Leaders know this. Give people bread and circuses and they will not question the deeper machinery. Distract them with consumer goods, with entertainment, with tribal conflicts, and the truth, no matter how visible, fades into the background. Jean-Paul Sartre added another layer, the human tendency toward bad faith. Sartre argued that people flee from the radical responsibility of freedom by deceiving themselves. We lie to ourselves in order to avoid facing the terrifying truth that we are free to choose, free to act, and therefore responsible for the consequences. Leaders rely on this self-deception. They understand that most people prefer comforting lies to existential freedom. After all, freedom demands courage. Lies only demand obedience. And then there is Viktor Frankl, who insisted that the deepest human drive is not power or pleasure, but meaning. When meaning is absent, people will grasp at any narrative that offers it, even if it is hollow, manipulative, or destructive. Leaders craft stories not to inform, but to give the illusion of coherence. They promise redemption, progress, or unity. They frame chaos as order, and because we cannot bear the thought that life might be meaningless, we accept their words, even when reality contradicts them. But perhaps the most insidious force is what Aldous Huxley foresaw, not a future of tyranny through pain, but a future of tyranny through pleasure. In Brave New World, he warned that people would not rebel against oppression because they would come to love their servitude. Instead of being silenced, they would be drowned in triviality. Instead of being beaten down, they would be numbed by endless entertainment, endless consumption, endless distraction. And is this not precisely the world we live in now? Think about it. The truth of corruption, exploitation, environmental collapse, and inequality is not hidden. It is reported, documented, and even joked about. And yet people scroll past it, too preoccupied with celebrity gossip, sports scores, or the next viral meme. The greatest weapon of deception is not secrecy, but saturation. The truth is mixed with so much noise that it loses its urgency. Psychology reinforces this with what researchers call inattentional blindness. We fail to notice what is in front of us if our attention is directed elsewhere. A magician distracts you with one hand while the other performs the trick. Leaders do the same. While you argue about cultural flashpoints, economic policies are rewritten. While you binge on entertainment, wars are justified. While you obsess over scandals, systemic corruption deepens. The truth is always visible, but your gaze is directed away. This is the hidden problem. Truth is not concealed, it is neutralized. Leaders know that humans crave narratives more than facts, stability more than freedom, comfort more than truth. And so they exploit the ancient architecture of our psyche, weaving illusions that we willingly accept, because to reject them would mean confronting our own complicity. Carlin saw this decades ago. He mocked the very illusions we cling to, the idea that politicians work for the people, that corporations care about you, that freedom is guaranteed. His comedy was unsettling because it shattered the illusion in real time. Yet even then, many laughed, nodded, and went back to their lives unchanged. Why? Because seeing the truth is one thing, bearing its weight is another, and so the fog persists. Leaders do not hide the truth behind locked doors. They broadcast it, disguise it as entertainment, bury it beneath trivialities, and trust that you will be too distracted to notice. The problem is not their deception, it is our willingness to embrace it. The stage is now set for the next realization. If the truth is neutralized, if our psychology conspires with our leaders to keep us blind, then what are the consequences? How does this hidden problem seep into the fabric of our daily lives, shaping not only our politics and societies, but our very identities? Imagine standing in a room filled with mirrors, but each mirror is bent, warped, or tinted. You see fragments of yourself, distorted, stretched, compressed, yet never whole. At first you laugh at the funhouse illusion. But over time, as you continue to live inside that room, you begin to mistake the distortions for reality. Slowly you forget what your true face looks like. This is what happens when leaders hide truth in plain sight. The distortions are constant, subtle, and insidious. You are not directly lied to. You are simply shown mirrors that twist the truth until you no longer know the difference. And the most unsettling part, you adapt. You stop questioning. You accept the distortions as normal. The unseen consequences ripple outward, touching everything from how you think to how society organizes itself. They shape not only the stories you are told, but the stories you tell yourself. The erosion of trust. When truth is neutralized, trust corrodes. Not suddenly, but gradually, like rust eating away at steel. On the surface, people still go about their daily lives. They vote, they buy, they obey laws. But deep within, doubt festers. You begin to suspect that every promise is hollow, every word rehearsed, every gesture calculated. Leaders talk of unity, yet division deepens. They promise transparency, yet their language grows more opaque. The result is not just distrust in leaders, it is distrust in reality itself. You begin to wonder, who can I believe? What can I believe? Is truth even knowable anymore? This erosion leads to a society where cynicism replaces faith, suspicion replaces solidarity. People stop striving for collective good because they no longer believe collective good is possible. The birth of learned helplessness. Psychologists speak of learned helplessness when repeated exposure to uncontrollable deception convinces you that resistance is futile. If every leader lies, if every system manipulates, why bother resisting at all? Slowly, apathy sets in. People retreat into survival mode, caring only for their own small circles, abandoning the larger struggle for justice or truth. This is the silent triumph of manipulation, not obedience enforced by fear, but apathy born of exhaustion. Leaders don't need to silence you with violence if they can numb you into indifference. The colonization of identity truth is not just about politics. It is about who you believe you are. When leaders flood your mind with distorted narratives, they begin to colonize your identity. Advertising tells you what success looks like. Politicians tell you what patriotism means. Influencers tell you how happiness should feel. Without realizing it, you begin to define yourself through borrowed language. Carl Jung warned against this when he spoke of the persona, the mask society forces us to wear. When we live through these masks, we lose contact with the self, the deeper, authentic identity hidden beneath social roles. In a culture where leaders manipulate truth, The persona becomes thicker, heavier. You lose touch with who you truly are because you are constantly adapting to external scripts. Division as a strategy. Another unseen consequence, the weaponization of division. When truth is blurred, people turn against each other instead of against the forces deceiving them. You are told that your neighbor, your co-worker, your fellow citizen is the enemy. Religion against religion, party against party, race against race. And here lies the brilliance of the deception. While people fight each other over distorted narratives, leaders continue their work unchallenged. Jean-Paul Sartre described this as living in bad faith. We fight shallow battles to avoid confronting the deeper absurdity of existence. Division distracts us from unity, and without unity, the truth remains powerless. Numbness and the death of urgency. Perhaps the most dangerous consequence is numbness. When everything is exposed and yet nothing changes, people grow desensitized. Scandals break, corruption is revealed, hypocrisy is mocked, yet life goes on unchanged. You scroll past truths that would once have shattered you, because now they feel like background noise. This numbness is fatal. It is not the rage of the oppressed that sustains systems of deception, it is the indifference of the masses. As Huxley feared, we do not rebel because we are too entertained, too distracted, too exhausted. The greatest prison is not made of walls, but of numbness. The subtle reshaping of reality neuroscience reveals that repeated exposure to distorted narratives physically rewires the brain. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, availability bias, and authority bias shape how we perceive information. Over time, the brain adapts to the illusions. It begins to expect them, normalize them, and even defend them. This is why you may feel anger when someone challenges the official narrative, even when you know deep down something is wrong. You are not defending the truth, you are defending the comfort of your brain's adaptation. Leaders rely on this. They know that once the brain adjusts to distortions, it will resist correction. The emotional weight pause here. Feel the weight of this realization. The unseen consequences are not abstract. They live inside you. Every time you hesitate to speak truth, every time you scroll past a headline you cannot bear to process, every time you accept a distortion because it is easier than resisting, you are living these consequences. This is not only about politics or leaders, it is about the slow, invisible shaping of your soul. Carlin warned us with brutal clarity. They don't give a fucking about you. It wasn't a joke. It was the truth in plain sight. And yet, even as he said it, audiences laughed because laughter was safer than despair. But laughter without action is surrender. And surrender is precisely what the system desires. So ask yourself, what is the cost of this unseen machinery? What is lost when generations grow up mistaking distortion for reality? What kind of society is built when numbness replaces outrage, when apathy replaces hope, when division replaces solidarity? The answer is not comfortable, but it is unavoidable. The consequence of truth hidden in plain sight is not only political decay, it is spiritual decay. It is the slow withering of our capacity to live authentically, to resist courageously, to love deeply. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a darkened theater. The stage glows with light, the actors perform their roles, and the audience around you is captivated. For hours you have watched, laughed, cried, and applauded. But then suddenly a thought strikes you. What if this is not the real story? You turn your head, and for the first time you notice something strange. Beyond the stage lights, in the shadows of the wings, other figures move, directors, handlers, stage managers. The real power lies not with the actors you've been watching, but with the unseen forces orchestrating the spectacle. At that moment, you face a choice. Do you keep watching the play and pretend it is reality? Or do you stand up, walk out of the theater, and confront the world outside? This is the essence of rebellion. It is not about burning the theater down. It is about daring to step beyond it. Rebellion begins with vision. The first act of freedom is not action. It is perception. To rebel against illusions, you must first see them as illusions. Carl Jung insisted that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Leaders thrive on your unconscious compliance, your unexamined habits, your automatic trust in authority, your willingness to accept appearances. The rebellion begins when you notice the script, when you realize that what passes for truth is often theater, This is why awareness is dangerous to power. A single individual who sees clearly cannot be manipulated in the same way. They may still be subject to external forces, but their inner compass no longer belongs to someone else. Question everything you've been taught. Nietzsche urged us to practice the philosophy of suspicion. Do not simply accept the values handed down to you, interrogate them. Ask, who benefits from this belief? Whose interests are served when I obey this rule? When leaders declare war in the name of peace, ask what resources or powers are gained. When corporations declare loyalty to social causes, ask how much profit they stand to make. When politicians repeat slogans about freedom, ask who is excluded from that freedom. Rebellion begins with the refusal to swallow words at face value. Refuse numbness, reclaim urgency. One of the greatest victories of manipulation is numbness. To break free, you must reclaim urgency. This means refusing to scroll past truths that wound you. Let them wound you. Let them break the armor of apathy. Viktor Frankl wrote that suffering, when met with meaning, becomes bearable. The truth may hurt, but it is through that hurt that you awaken. Rebellion is not the absence of pain. It is the willingness to transform pain into clarity. Rebuild community. Resist division. Leaders manipulate by dividing, by pitting citizens against each other. Rebellion, therefore, is the radical act of unity. Sartre reminded us that while freedom is individual, its meaning emerges in relation to others. To resist manipulation, we must rebuild solidarity. That means refusing to demonize those who are different, refusing to let propaganda turn neighbors into enemies. Unity terrifies power because it cannot be easily controlled. When people come together in shared truth, illusions lose their grip. Take back your language. Language is power. Leaders manipulate not only through laws and policies, but through words that frame reality. To break free, you must reclaim language. Refuse their definitions. Redefine the words that shape your identity. When you are told that freedom means obedience, redefine freedom as awareness. When you are told that success is consumption, redefine success as authenticity. When you are told that peace is silence, redefine peace as justice. The rebellion is linguistic as much as it is political. Embrace the courage of outsiders. Rebellion often feels lonely. To see what others refuse to see is to walk a harder path. Yet history shows that the most transformative shifts begin with individuals who dared to be outsiders. Socrates condemned for corrupting the youth. Nietzsche dismissed as a madman. Huxley mocked for his dystopian visions. Carlin laughed at for jokes that were not jokes at all. They remind us that rebellion is not about immediate victory. It is about planting seeds of vision that may not bloom in your lifetime, but will change the soil for those who come after. Practice inner autonomy. The deepest rebellion is not overthrowing leaders, but reclaiming your inner sovereignty. Frankl spoke of the one freedom that can never be taken away, the freedom to choose your response, even when everything else is controlled. Your interpretation, your values, your inner world remain yours if you claim them. When truth is distorted outside you, turn inward, meditate, reflect, journal. Reconnect with the self that Jung described, the inner wholeness beyond masks and roles. Leaders may manipulate the outer spectacle, but they cannot reach the sanctuary of a mind that has awakened. Counterintuitive liberation. Here lies the paradox. Rebellion does not always mean fighting harder. Sometimes it means stepping aside, refusing to play the game, walking away from the theater altogether. Carlin once said, "Yeah, the game is rigged. Forget the politicians. They're there to give you the illusion you have freedom of choice." To break free, you may need to stop believing the game is winnable on their terms. The true rebellion is not playing by their rules, but writing new ones. The seed of transformation pours here. Imagine yourself walking out of that theater, blinking in the sunlight. The stage is behind you, the applause still echoing, but you are free. What now? This is the terrifying beauty of rebellion. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you awaken, you cannot return to sleep. And in that moment, the responsibility shifts to you, not only to reject illusions, but to create meaning, to live differently, to inspire others. The rebellion is not a single act, but a way of being. It is the daily discipline of seeing clearly, questioning courageously, and living authentically. Imagine you have walked out of the theater. The stage is behind you. The actors still performing for those who remain inside, but you no longer belong to the audience. The sunlight burns your eyes at first. It is harsh, raw, and unfiltered. For so long, your vision was adjusted to the carefully curated glow of stage lights. Now the real world, in its unvarnished form, feels almost unbearable. And yet, this is the beginning of clarity. The ultimate truth is that leaders do not simply manipulate the world. They manipulate the lens through which you see the world. The true prison is not built of walls or barbed wire, but of perception. Once you recognize this, the bars dissolve. The final realization: there was never a savior. Coming perhaps the most disorienting revelation is this: no leader is coming to save you. No politician, no philosopher king, no revolutionary hero will carry the weight of your freedom. From Caesar to Churchill, from presidents to prime ministers, every leader is shaped by the same human flaws: ego, ambition, fear. To entrust your soul to them is to give away the very autonomy that defines you. George Carlin, with his razor-edged humor, said it without ceremony. The owners of this country don't want an informed, educated people capable of critical thinking. That's against their interests. His laughter carried a dark message, that salvation offered by leaders is often another performance. The truth is, salvation has always been your responsibility. The burden of freedom is heavier than we imagine. Sartre called it a curse as much as a blessing. Once you see clearly, you cannot pretend you are not responsible. You can no longer blame leaders entirely. You can no longer hide behind the excuse of manipulation. To be awake is to carry the burden of choice, of responsibility for your own life. It is tempting to remain in the theater because life feels easier when someone else writes the script. But the ultimate truth demands that you write your own, the hidden power. Within, Carl Jung believed that true liberation comes from individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the shadow, the unconscious, the parts of ourselves we have ignored. Leaders succeed in manipulation precisely because most people avoid this work. They project their inner fears, unacknowledged desires, and unintegrated shadows onto those in power. The ultimate truth is that you cannot change the world outside until you confront the world within. Leaders exploit the fear you refuse to face. When you face it, when you reclaim your shadow, you are no longer prey to their games. Truth is not given. It is created. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote that truth passes through 3 stages: first ridiculed, then violently opposed, and finally accepted as self-evident. But the deepest truths do not descend from authority. They emerge from the struggle of the individual who dares to think, to suffer, to seek meaning in chaos. Viktor Frankl's insight after surviving the camps was not that life offers inherent truth, but that humans must create meaning even when meaning seems absent. The ultimate truth is that you do not find freedom, you invent it. Moment by moment, choice by choice. The death of illusion. The birth of vision. Once you see how leaders hide truth in plain sight, you realize that every institution, politics, religion, media, even education, has always been a stage, designed not simply to inform, but to condition. This realization can break you. It can lead to despair, nihilism, the haunting sense that everything is performance and nothing is real. But beyond that despair lies the deeper truth. Illusions collapse not to leave you empty, but to return you to the raw ground of reality where vision can grow. Without illusions, you see the fragility of life, the brevity of existence, the smallness of human power. And paradoxically, that is where liberation blooms. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead was not simply an attack, it was an invitation. If the old gods, the old leaders, the old illusions have crumbled, then you are free to create. The burden is terrifying, but it is also magnificent. The power of refusal. The ultimate truth does not ask you to conquer nations or dismantle governments. It asks something far more radical: the courage to refuse. Refuse to give your inner life to manipulative leaders. Refuse to accept appearances as reality. Refuse to trade your awareness for comfort. The most powerful act of rebellion is simple: to live awake, to see clearly, to choose deliberately, to remain human in a world that profits from your numbness. Picture it now. The camera of your life pulls back. You are no longer in the theater, no longer blinded by the stage. The city sprawls before you, humming with illusions, but you walk with eyes open. Others may still sit in their seats applauding the spectacle, but you know, you have seen behind the curtain. You carry the ultimate truth, that leaders can hide truths in plain sight, but they cannot erase your vision once you claim it. You walk into the chaos of reality, carrying the heavy, beautiful burden of freedom. The applause fades, the lights dim, and you at last step into the vast, unscripted silence of your own becoming. The ultimate truth is not comfortable, it is not safe, but it is real. And in the end, reality, however raw, however painful, is the only ground upon which you can build a life that is truly yours.